welcome back. In this segment we are going to go all the way down to Antarctica. But before we get there, Rolf was lucky enough. He lived a very old life. In fact, he died at the age of 86. So from the 19th century to the 20th century. And he was lucky enough to live in the 1950s where he got the chance to score for a film. So when you score in music, it just means you're writing music for a film. And he got that chance. And the film he was writing for was called Scott of the Antarctic. And it was a tragic tale, but yet it is a true story, and I want you guys to go read it up. It's about Robert Falcon Scott's ill-fated adventure to the South Pole. The South Pole is not Antarctica, it's right at the bottom of Antarctica, right in the middle of the world. Right in the middle of the world at the bottom, if that makes sense. So it's where all the lines of latitude and longitude come and they meet together. Same thing with the North Pole, South Pole. And yeah, it's about a story of Robert Falcon Scott, who took his men aboard the ship called Terra Nova to have a Terra Nova expedition to be the first people to discover the South Pole. However, they were beaten to it by a person called Roald Amundsen, who was a Norwegian, and on their way back, things didn't turn out the way they wanted, and him and his entire squad, they all died from the cold and lack of food and starvation. So when Ralph heard this story, he was greatly inspired, and he was very enthused when he was asked to write the music for this piece called the Antarctic Symphony. In fact, he loved his work so much, he went beyond the movie and just composed a full-on symphony for it, and it's very popular to this day. As you listen to this piece, I want you to pay attention to the howling voices within the third minute mark, somewhere in the third minute, and think about how it sounds like wind in a snowstorm or wind passing through a cold cave, because that's what he's trying to symbolize. And when you listen to this, you feel like, oh, it's kind of like a dreary, dark, cold place, because he's trying to encapsulate the emotion of what those men were going through when they were trapped, when they had no hope of returning, when they're already beaten to discovering the South Pole. After that, so Scott, we finally reached the end of his life, and he spent the end of his life in London. Remember, he was rich, and he just could bore the fruits of all his hard labor. He enjoyed it all at the end of his life. He was even invited to write a new piece of coronation for Queen Elizabeth II. Can you imagine that? So Queen Elizabeth II, who is still Queen of England right now, he was invited to compose for her in the 1950s. Pretty incredible. Rolf's life was marked by a love of country and a firm commitment to his part to preserve his country's musical tradition. Now he stands as one of England's most famous composers, and we can say he did a pretty good job. See you guys next week.